Good evening, race fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of Round 5 of the OLR x VSR Midweek Championship live here on TRTN. As always, I am Regan Clark, and welcome to a major motorsporting hub here in Great Britain for all things national motorsports, right here in Cheshire, England, at the Oulton Park circuit. Founded in 1953, it comprised of 17 turns and 2.6, a little under 2.7 miles and a little over 4.3 kilometres of FIA Grade 3. A major national motorsports hub, then we find ourselves at the international configuration of Oulton Park. Seeing competition from the British Touring Car Championship, British Superbike Championship, British GT Championship and TCR UK, among others. For a number of years before 2004, it served originally as the basis of a non-championship round of Formula 1. Now, of course, that was phased out in and around the 70s to 80s, but up until that point, especially throughout the 50s, this saw racing, albeit off of the main calendar of Formula 1, under the guise of the Oulton Park International Gold Cup. While it traded hands in disciplines over the years, the F1 rounds saw wins from such icons of motorsports as Sir Sterling Moss, Jim Clark, and looking up further through the list, Jack Brabham, Jackie Stewart, and Jackie Ixt, among several others. The last ever formally recognised round of the Oulton Park International Gold Cup was in 2004, won by Barry Williams in an Aston Martin DBR4, as the series had long since moved to historic car racing following a brief jaunt in the British GT Championship, the last of which was won by Tim Harvey and Rob Wilson driving a Dodge Viper GTSR in the 2001 iteration. Oulton Park is a delightful circuit here in the MSV lineup. A proper jewel when stood toe-to-toe with Brands Hatch and Donington Park, two very popular MSV destinations used here on Assetto Corsa Competizione, and we've seen this one to be a rather poignant position in the former VSR GT3 Championship, as this has played around several rounds of the last few seasons. Now, as we head in further towards the second half of the championship, reeling away from the midway last week in Barcelona, we head into a double header here in Great Britain before heading to Silverstone next week and finishing off our chapter there before moving over to the land of the rising sun at the Suzuka International Racing Course in Mie Prefecture, Japan. The season finale only a few weeks away on August 12th, when we head to the Misano World Circuit over in Italy. But for now, we find ourselves here 4 rounds strong and heading up into our 5th, taking a look in towards the last couple of wins of the championship. Reeling away from round 4 saw brand new wins in both platinum and gold. Owen Camu took their first win of the season, with Grady and Zuzi winning in gold. Leroy Donald and Ryan Castle went for consecutive wins following their successes the round prior to last at round 3. They're now on 2 in a row across both silver and bronze. We see a big slide here from one of the recent talks of the town, the return of Carlos Dish in a very bizarre bit of Japanese machinery. Not far then from their home race by the end of this season, we see the return of the Honda NSX, specifically the second generation NSX GT3 Evo model, 3.5 litre Honda V6 engine, mid-mount rear drive, 6-speed sequential, roughly around 1,270 kilos dry, and anywhere up the range of 550 horsepower. A very scarcely sighted machine here on the modern ACC Meta. Who else then to get behind the wheel than the mad scientist that is the 54, the Swiss talent of Carlos Dish, driver with quite a bit of credence in the former VSR GT3 Championship. And he's not alone, because for the first time in months, perhaps years, we see the return of a driver that has carried with him a very unique chapter of that series' history. Russell Nash returns to the grid here on what is the spiritual successor of the VSR GT3 Championship, the OLR x VSR Midweek. For those keen-eyed and have been watching on with this Wednesday night championship for the longest time, our first ever coverage came back from season 7 of VSR, where this one here, under the alias of Just Boris, took the season 7 championship by force. He went toe-to-toe with Carlos Dish when he operated under the name of White Doctor for the controversial season 8 championship title. Then heading up in towards season 9 saw both of them drop away to give rise to Kieran Rod's charge up towards season 9's oddball Porsche Cup Championship. And then season 10 and 11 saw a swift return back to formalities with the GT3s, which saw Carlos Dish go up for 3 championships on the trot. And so, Fate Galaxy, who has been quite the prominent rise in the Platinum Championship, still the leader of the Platinum Championships as we head on in past the last 10 minutes here of free practice, and we'll discuss the championship standings in a moment. We'll go toe-to-toe with Carlos Dish, his teammate at Euro Titans, and both of their rival-to-be here Russell Nash. More on that, though, in a moment. Taking a look in towards the championship standings after round 4 of the championship here. And starting off with the Platinums, Fake Galaxy leads the charge with 114 points. That stagnated in the absence of him last round around. So that does sort of shrink the gap here for Declan Anderson. Now staying in second ahead of Alan Alexander, who's now in third. Lee Evans in fourth. John O'Driscoll in fifth. Kieran Rod in sixth. And Owen Camus joins the scoring ranks after last round with his win, bringing him to 38 points in total. In the gold division, Ian Oates continues to lead the charge here, but by a narrowing 8-point margin over Chris Davies in second. Antonio Angeletta in third, with Mr. Burney in fourth. Radi Nzuzi in fifth, Jaden Johnson Ward in sixth, and Tadi Haysloop in seventh after his inaugural round of the OLR VSR Midweek Championship. In the silver standings, things have massively grown, with Leroy Donald still leading Matt Critt in second. A joint third between Tishavari and McNally at 75 points apiece. Robert Ogan rounds out the top 5 with 62 points. Mattia Marignoni shoots up through the order to 6th place in the championship, 20 points behind Ogan, with Giovanni Palumbo into 7th. Ben Dexter in 8th, Lewis Perslow 9th, and Peter Mikulas rounding out the top 10. Milan Picorni in 11th, Callum Gray in 12th. Last but not least then, the bronze standings. Ryan Castle continues to lead, but by a shrinking margin here. You can see Callum Turner only 14 points away. Connor Osborne in third, Wayne Trigg in fourth, and Bartek Kowalik rounds out the top 5. And so, north of 20 cars, things are looking particularly interesting for the run-in towards tonight's event, and getting up in towards qualifying in a moment's time. We'll start to set the scene here for what is to follow in this 5th round of the championship. Taking a look at the balance of performance listings before we get in towards qualifying today. Bentley find themselves with the most advantage, so grinning ear to ear to hear this news will be Alan Alexander, currently 4th in today's session. Lexus with 26 kilos off, Ferrari with 10, Ford with 7, but they still hold a 20% engine restrictor for tonight's round. Mercedes lose 2 kilos, Porsche lose 1. BMW nothing gained, neither lost for the M4. Heading up into the weight gain department, Honda gain a single kilo on their return to competition in our lens here on TRTN. So in spite of what has been so far a dominant performance, he has done that to ever so slightly a detriment under BOP changes. McLaren plus 8 kilos then. As we take a look further along the list to see first of the double figure entries, Lamborghini 13 kilos heavier under BOP tonight. Nissan with 15 kilos, Aston Martin with 26. Quite the ensemble of drivers then, 24 in total as we head up in towards qualifying in a moment's time then. A bit of trouble for Lee Evans in the 44. Still carving out this unique chapter of his midweek career with Lamborghini, having spent his time previously with Mercedes and Nissan. We've spoke several times over the course of the season about the progress and the changes he's had to face head on. Right now 6th in the session, Rod in 7th, Davies 8th, O'Driscoll 9th, and Camus, last round's race winner in Platinum, rounds out the top 10 here in free practice. Antonio Angeletta in 11th, and a brand new driver. This is Charlie Broadfield, and I suppose not the greatest of introductions here for the number 18, but he is a brand new driver onto this field. Will make his debut tonight and is leading that silver division on the run-up towards qualifying. Currently fastest of the silvers in 12th place overall. Grady Nzuzi in 13th, and Ian Oates in 14th. Matt Critt rounds out the top 15. Ryan Castle, last round's bronze division winner, now not all entirely alone, as Connor Osborne, his rival in the bronze championship, is back onto the grid, but still only 2 bronze drivers. Are we seeing the extinction of the current bronze division? Tonight's round could very well put the final nail in the coffin. Only 2 drivers remaining of the bronze category, with a stacked out platinum, gold and silver. There may be calls heading up in towards what would be the next season of this, unless it changes its name back to the VSR Midweek Championship, or the VSR GT3 Championship, I should say. Whatever number that chooses to take, whether it will be Season 13, as this is spiritually Season 12, or if this will be Season 2 of the OLR VSR Midweek Championship as it serves as a brand new chapter. Whatever that number it does take, there may be some calls here for a massive rejigging of things when it comes to those categories and how they are chosen to be recognized on this grid, as there is a massive imbalance now heading up into the second half. With only 30 or so seconds left to go in free practice, qualifying looms here at a nice and dry Oulton Park. That is great news for these drivers. We'll get to explore all nooks and crannies of this wonderful circuit. Heading up through Lodge Corner now to Deer Leap. Here for the number 61, Kieran Rod dives to the pit lane. Now there is the heavy expectations for at least 3 of these drivers at the moment. Rod, Alexander and O'Driscoll, that they could be back up to their old antics as the back row bandits of this season. And we do note this has been a rather curious development. We've just been given light of a situation here, courtesy of a report submitted to us by as it would stand here, it's Alan Alexander, as he's doing 2 jobs at once. He's both relaying the word of race control, and he's also driving in that 315 Continental, saying that there is a possible mistake by the admins. All McLarens and Porsches do not have their balance of performance applied. And just before we get into that session, what that means is McLaren's actually 8 kilos lighter than what they would have expected to be. As for Porsche, they only gain a kilo. So, while not great, it's not, I wouldn't say disastrous here. I will be keeping an ear to the ground as to what exactly race control is planning to do on that, if they plan to do anything at all, or if there will just be something spoken about after today's event. Because regardless, it's neither Porsche nor McLaren that top the timing charts at the end of free practice here. It's Honda, courtesy of Carlos Disch in the 54 Honda NSX, otherwise showing the number 10, that striking Alpha Tauri livery. Really, really one of the best looking liveries in the game there. And so, nearest to the line, as it would appear, is the number 1. I want to say this is the 144 here. Yes, it's Grady and Zuzi down to the line for the run-up in towards qualifying. Qualifying looms then for round 5 of the championship, and Zuzi across the line, and we are now heading firmly in towards qualifying. The calm before the storm that is round 5 of the championship. You can see wasting absolutely no time is Carlos Disch to get up into the head of the field here in that miraculous new appearance by Honda. Making our way then down through Denton's in towards Cascades, getting a look at the qualifying predictions for today's event. Carlos Disch is predicted at pole, and not by a long shot here, because actually not by a short margin, it is by a long shot, funnily enough, as it is standing 1.1 seconds nearly over the nearest time. That'll be Lee Evans in second, Declan Anderson looking at third, with Robert Ogan looking at fourth, Antonio Angeletta looking at 5th place, with Alan Alexander looking at 6th, Kieran Rod looking at 7th, Chris Davies at 8th, Ian Oates in 9th, and Grady and Zuzi rounding out that top 10. The 315 already seeing himself out of the session, so that opens doors up from the cars behind, and that could still be followed in force here by Rod. Another driver likely to drop from this session today, so that bleed in from the 3rd to 4th row, from 6th to 7th, could be nullified under these qualifying predictions, and that opens doors up for the drivers behind them, so keeping an eye there for shifts of position for Davies, Oateson and Zuzi. But Carlos Disch looks fairly confident on his assertion to take pole position today in this bizarre reappearance of a brand long thought dead from the modern ACC meta here on console, the Honda NSX. Now, we had seen resurgences from other Japanese manufacturers in the past, Lexus and Nissan most poignantly in the last few months. Honda now joining that trifecta of Japanese machinery. And not too long then from their home race at the Suzuka International Racing Course. On board with Carlos Disch for the track tour. Here at the Oulton Park Circuit, the international configuration, the longest of our variations here. Down through Old Hall Corner we go at turn 1, sharp right-hander. Then on the drop downhill through Denton's at turn 2, slight right-hander, then into a long sweeping left here under the brakes into Cascades. On board then with Carlos Disch as we barrel up towards what is going to be the most tumultuous section of the track when it comes to incidents. Turn 4 here at the Island Bend. You saw the back end step loose on that Honda, wrestling with the Swiss talent, currently trying to get times out of it as we head up through at turn 5 here at Shell Oil's corner, in towards the first of our 2 chicanes here at Britain's, turns 7, 8 and 9, following a slight right-hander at turn 6 just before it. Up the hilltop straight we go, in towards Hislop's. On board then with the 54. Through to Hislop's at turn 11. In through to turn 12. Sharp right-hander here to bring us on the run uphill. If I'm not mistaken, a 13% incline as we leap up past Clay Hill at turn 13. Now to Water Tower at turn 14. Druids Corner at turn 15. Not to be confused with the same named corner being turned 2 at Brands Hatch. Of course, broadly different corners. Same name. Down Warwick Bridge in towards Lodge Corner at turn 16. And we have this crest and dip combo right after Lodge corner, then into Deer Leap, blind uphill left-hander down towards the line, then from Carlos Deach, the first time in qualifying, 1:33.777 from the Honda. Then from behind him went the number 9, Declan Anderson, put in the first valid time, as that lap we saw just a moment ago from Deach didn't count for squat. The 54 was invalid on that first flyer, and it now leaves Kieran Rodd fastest, with Anderson second, Leroy Donald in third, and Robert Ogan in fourth, Matt Critt in fifth, and now we all see a bump down a position from Antonio Angeletta's introduction as Porsche takes stranglehold on this grid. In a very early decisive command of that top 10, 5 of those positions are Porsches. But now here comes more action from Lamborghini. Rodd was fastest, but Evans is now on the front row alongside him. Jaden Johnson-Ward joins the fray there from 8th place behind. Now we see Chris Davies to line. It is worth noting, still down towards the line in a moment's time here. Ian Oates following from behind him, the number 7 of Russell Nash. We saw in his time when he competed under his online alias Just Boris. This one has been a formidable talent in qualifying sessions. Has all the time spent away from these drivers since his last appearance to this midweek championship, but it was still known as the VSR GT3 championship back in season 8. Dulled the blade at all here for Nash across the line, off of his outlap onto a flyer. We'll see him to the line not too long from now. 2:47 approaching the line. Ben Dexter goes to 12th. Number 54 is approaching the line swiftly here, so just as quick as that first time was denied. Could the second one be much different? Across the line goes Carlos Deach to fastest by 3/10. The Honda on flying form here. 3/10 clear. You can see just how close the margin now is when put in the light between Anderson and Rodd, as Anderson now goes second fastest over Rodd by 8 thousandths of a second. 96 across the line. That was for Robert Ogan. And then a new fastest time. It's Fake Galaxy. 543 thousandths in the clear over Carlos Deach. Of course, Galaxy and Deach are now teammates over at the Euro Titans Endurance team. We've seen them as a dynamic duo of sorts in the last few championships we've covered. But here on the midweek, they stand alone. No team to fly behind them. It is every man for themselves on this grid, and Galaxy takes that new fastest time, 1:32.932. Number 18 across the line a moment ago. That was for the new driver on the block here, Charlie Broadfield. No time set at the moment, but still plenty of time to play with before the end of this session. Number 6 to the line. From behind him, the number 7. Ian Oates, and his last lap went to 8th place. Where does he find himself as he heads up across the line? Just now gone across the line there, stays 8th. Number 7 down to the line. Russell Nash goes to 7th. And his first lap in there, into the top 10, up and ahead of Jaden Johnson-Ward, Ian Oates, and Leroy Donald in the top 10. Not too far off a stab of long-time VSR veteran Chris Davies, 2-time champion. Carlos Deach, a 3-time champion in VSR. He's really toying with the forces that be on this grid today. But he still stands a rather precarious half-second from Fate Galaxy, with Lee Evans nearly 3/4 of a second away from that number 55 at the head of the field. There may be some calls for concern following that startling reveal that McLaren, in a stroke of surprisingly good luck for the British manufacturer, had not had their BOP administered by race control due to a mistake in the coding. That has, under the eyes of some, considered that to be a bit of a unfair advantage over to McLaren. Now, of course, when taking a look back in towards the balance of performance, it was at least showing the fact they were getting 8 kilos on. Now, anyone can tell you when they've been on this grid long enough, if it's not double figures, there's really not too much a difference that can actually be felt behind the wheel. It usually comes down to the case of tyres, where with a single mandatory pit stop in tonight's race, as has been regulation standard over the last 4 rounds of the championship, with the 75 minutes of racing to follow not long from this point, these drivers will be taking new tyres, so really it's only going to be something felt in extreme cases for cars that absolutely chew through their Pirellis. And this is one among them, but Lamborghini's not suffering the same plight. In fact, they're suffering one far worse because they're 13 kilos heavier than should be. Fake Galaxy now down to second by 300ths as Carlos Dish does the unthinkable and goes into the new fastest time. The first 8 minutes of qualifying has given us quite the twist and turn at every which way here. Lord only knows what the race is going to look like once we're done with today's session. 1:32.902, the new fastest time by Carlos Dish and Honda. And I don't believe in all our time covering GT3 races here on TRTN we've ever been presented with the opportunity for a Honda-led win. I'm trying to think back to it here and really racking my brain. I do seem to recall some very solid performances back in the very early days as TRTN when we worked alongside AXRL with their Southern Endurance Series. It was the Kitsune Motorsports car of Joshua Kaufman. I'm not sure if that ever led to a win though, as we now see Dish is back down a second, Galaxy's back on top, 1:32.655, the new fastest time from the 55 McLaren. Declan Anderson, we most recently saw on the Sunday League moving over to Lexus, will spend the remainder of this season with the Porsche. We saw him toy with a few decisions over on the NLRL Sunday League, of which we already were able to conclude the championship runs for on all three fronts. The only one remaining now is the manufacturer's one that we've not actually been tracking all too often. As for Anderson, in that number 9, once we see him down towards the line here, taking a look back into where he stands on things at the moment, he's only, as it stands to be the case, about 22 points away from Fake Galaxy at the head of the Platinum standings. With the reintroduction of Carlos Dish into the championship run, as well as the introduction of some serious heavy hitters in the form of Russell Nash, currently down in 7th, but only a few tenths away from the 3rd row, this could really turn the heat up on competition today. Is the Bentley winning the manufacturers, says Soviet Mario 911, otherwise known as Alan Alexander. Not a clue in this championship. Again, much like the Sunday League, manufacturers is not something we're obliged to cover. It's not anything that's written in our contract at that time. The TRC GT Manufacturers Cup was the only championship we've covered where the manufacturers played a major role in GT racing. Other than that, it would have otherwise been the story of Formula One way back in our super early days of our career, but that would have had something of a round-by-round analysis. This is quite the unique story. We are noting as well, just to quickly take a look at something here. I believe we are having a little bit of interference on the microphone. We've only just took note of that now. You will have to bear with us for just a moment whilst we fix that one. Currently 9 minutes left to go in the session. Fake Galaxy out on track. We'll leave you on board with the 55 whilst we quickly try to address some of the issues with the audio equipment. And now I believe they're just having fixed a little bit of the issue. I think we just had to adjust a few things around there on the audio mixer. The sound you might have been able to hear just before we made these adjustments was the sound of the air conditioner unit in the background, because it is diabolically hot in this room at the moment. With 8 minutes left to go, taking a look back in towards the session at hand, Fake Galaxy leads the charge nearly a quarter of a second over Carlos Dish in second place, with Declan Anderson in third. Lee Evans makes fourth, Kieran Rodds in that top 5. In 6th place, Chris Davies. In 7th is Ian Oates. In 8th, Leroy Donald. In 9th, Jaden Johnson-Ward. And in 10th is Robert Ogan. Now, it does present a curious story here, because Russell Nash has now started from the back. That is a curious one here for Russell Nash. I'm not entirely sure yet what was the precaution that led him to the pit lane. But he is starting towards the back here alongside
Alan Alexander. There is very likely the case he'll be starting alongside a driver he's come into arms with before in his time in the VSR GT3 Championship, John O'Driscoll, who at the time operated as Regent. You can see O'Driscoll's not too particularly happy about Nash attempting to steal his thunder here. Or at least that's how he's reading the situation. You can see him leaving the pit lane there. Alongside with him there, I believe, is Matt Critt. As we see there up in front of him is the 92, letting the 420 on pass. A very crowded Sector 1 here in Oulton Park. Meanwhile, Deesh just on his way out now from the pit lane. Fake Galaxy is currently out on track at this time, on his way down through the island bend in towards Shell Oils. There is that very curious story currently going on for Lamborghini as they join this oddball top 5. Lamborghini, Porsche, Honda and McLaren. That is quite the interesting look of things here. Chris Davies makes 6th place, Oates 7th, Donald 8th, Johnson Ward in 9th, and Ogun in the top 10. In terms of your division leaders here, we've 6 minutes left to go in qualifying. On the division pole for Platinum is Fake Galaxy. For the Golds division is, I believe, that of Chris Davies. Yes, that is the case there with the Platinum top 5 lockout. In the Silvers is Leroy Donald, and in the Bronze, it's Ryan Castle. 25 cars now in attendance to today's session, a very lively boost of numbers since last round. And I suppose they've found themselves in somewhat of a bottleneck situation here because they've got a quite large grid of drivers all raring to go for action today under 75 minutes of racing with a single mandatory pit stop as per regulation on one of the smallest tracks they could have been given opportunity to race on. The MSVs are not particularly kind to large grids. We've seen it at Brands Hatch in other series as well as the VSR GT3 Championship. Donington Park just about manages. Snetterton manages more than nicely. It's here at Oulton where we're really at our most packed in, and you can see it owes to this track's old school design ethic. It of course inherits a lot of its original structure from its old school 1953 layout. And taking a look back to the layout history of this circuit, it's been a case where a lot of what the track inherits has been from as far back as the 60s, at least in terms of its skeleton structure. Its time before becoming a circuit for motor racing, it was a former parkland and farmland as the Oulton estate, and then during the Second World War became a staging garrison for the US Army under the command of General Patton before D-Day. All that time later, much like many post-war installations, they would be converted into racetracks, though more commonly attributed to aerodromes and airfields, such has been the case of RAF Snetterton Heath becoming the Snetterton Circuit and RAF Silverstone becoming the Silverstone Grand Prix Circuit, as just 2 given examples. Plenty still are examples given to tracks that never originally started life with the aspirations to become motor racing circuits, nor had the skeleton structure to support it. Oulton Park was quite a bespoke project on land no longer useful as farmland. In fact, of the British circuits we've routinely covered here on TRTN, the only circuit that has actually seen its way through the Second World War was Donington Park, where it would be closed at the outbreak of the Second World War and would be used as a vehicle storage facility, ultimately being revived several decades after the war had ended in 1977. See here with Declan Anderson making his way up through Shell Oils. Now nearest to the line is the number 29 car here down to the line, Milan Picorni in the silver division. Then from behind him looks to approach the new driver on the block. We spoke a little bit there about the number 18 of Charlie Broadfield. He's 3rd in division. Down to the line with the number 18 Lamborghini. Goes all the way up and ahead into the silver division lead, leapfrogging Leroy Donald and Robert Ogun. And moreover, steps 1 foot closer to a top 5 outright start. Very impressive recent shunt of performance there for Broadfield, leading the silvers over, and I should say more relevantly, in between the 2 leading gold cars of Chris Davies and Ian Oates. Number 55 is nearest. Here comes Galaxy. 1:32.655 his own time to beat, but he's darting to the pit lane. 2.5 minutes just under left to go here in qualifying at Oulton Park. This could get seriously dicey for these drivers now. Time is money. What is the strategy here for Deesh? Anderson still laps the track and across the line. Found no improvement in his last lap just gone. In his fleeting day spent with the Porsche, we know it's more than likely in his next appearances he'll be seeing more and more competition out of the Lexus. Evans still holds a comfortable P4 ahead of Davies. Broadfield in 6th. Of course, with Kieran Rod disqualifying themselves from this session, we still await then the arrival of John O'Driscoll, who we just saw there facing the wrong way on Warwick Bridge. With a minute and a half left to go, O'Driscoll slides his way through, or at least attempts to slide his way through on turn 16. Now through to turn 17. What is the strategy here for the 420? We know he's eventually going to start from the back, but precisely how is he going to achieve that being the real question? Well, we'll see on with him a little later on. Back into the pit lane. Now, about to take a swinging prediction. He's going to go left and down the wrong way of the pit lane. You can already see him turning the wheels, and I know for a fact that he's listening to the broadcast, so he might try and do us wrong here. Yeah, you can see it. 1 donut, 2 donuts across the line a moment ago went the number 1, that being Antonio Angeletta. Onto the 6th row. Nearest is the 92. Going to catch on board then with the nearest driver down towards the line. I'm reading that correctly. It is the 92. Matt Critt to the line. From behind him is the number 9 of Declan Anderson. 2 Porsches to the line to make the last 2 to cross over before the point of no return. Across the line there went Critt to 11th. Anderson stays in 3rd. Number 14. We see there the 92 out wide will be nearest to the line, Leroy Donald, and that upset there from Matt Critt spilled down towards Anderson, effectively killing momentum for both of the Porsches into what would be their final flying lap of today's quali. Leroy Donald still has the chances here to try and fight for the chance of a Silver Division pole over Charlie Broadfield and Robert Ogan. Across the line goes Donald. So 1 more lap to play for in that 14. We'll see him to the line not long from now, but it might be a lot sooner than we think. A big slide out of Old Hall. Is it going to be enough? 2:47 down to the line. Ben Dexter stays where he is for 12th. Number 29 down towards the line from behind him, being Milan Picorni, stays in 17th. Number 6, nearest to the line, Ian Oates in the Gold Division, still looking to challenge that of Chris Davies for the Gold Division pole. He needs half a second in this lap. He simply just doesn't have it here. Following him in, the new driver on the block, one of several as a matter of fact, Charlie Broadfield on Silver Division pole. Number 1 nearest, so here comes Antonio Angeletta to the line. We saw him across the line just a moment ago, and it's a huge leap there for Angeletta. Goes up and ahead of Oates to relegate him to Gold Division 3rd. Angeletta goes 7th overall, Gold Division 2nd. The Gold Division pole still goes to Chris Davies up in 5th. At the end of this session, Fate Galaxy on overall and platinum pole in the number 55 McLaren. Right behind him, the oddball Honda, number 54 of Carlos Deesh. Declan Anderson rounds out the top 3. With Lee Evans in 4th. Behind him, Chris Davies on Gold Division pole. Your other pole sitters by division then: silver for Charlie Broadfield on his debut to this championship, and Ryan Castle in bronze. We'll get a full look at the grid in a moment's time. You can see, of course, the number of drivers relegated from starting this session anywhere further than the back end. Rod, Nash, Alexander and O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll really trying to handicap his performance now, going all the way to the back of a 25-car grid. We have 4 DSQs, 3 uncategorized with Camu and Zuzi and Palumbo. And then 18 cars categorized with Galaxy leading them on the run in towards round 5. Coming up around the corner then, 75 minutes of racing here at the Oulton Park circuit. Sadly, no news to discuss, so to speak, here on TRTN. So the only thing we can talk about is A, the event ahead of us, and B, what's coming up later on this week. We'll start with B though, because later on this week, the season finale of the NLRL Sunday League this Sunday, 6:30 p.m. BST. We're live from the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. 3 20-minute races to cap off Season 6. We'll be joined after that race by the Rookies Champion, with every hopes there, as well as a appearance from the Overall Drivers' Championship winner, that being Tyler Vermack. Will be joined as well by the Rookies Champion, that being Patrick Leger, for the calendar reveal for Season 7 of the NLRL Sunday League. Plenty more to be discussed at the end of this week. We have quite a sizable gap then between ourselves and the next event, so let's make things count here on Wednesday night. This is looking to be a stacked out return to form for the Midweek Championship, the former VSR GT3 Championship in spirit, as we now get word that Alan Alexander has been forced to the pit lane for the start of today's event. So he will start plumb last of it all. John O'Driscoll won't be the most pleased about it. He might even try to attempt to go to the pits himself. He doesn't want anyone to get a free position on him at all. That is going to be a confusing one. I've never seen a race to the back in qualifying, but yet here we are. Fake Galaxy leads the charge for the run in towards round 5 of the championship. Pole position for the number 55. Carlos Dish returning to the grid with Honda makes second place ahead of Declan Anderson in third and Lee Evans in fourth. Heading up the Goldfield, Chris Davies in overall 5th place ahead of the silver division pole sitter Charlie Broadfield in 6th. Antonio Angeletta in 7th, Ian Oates in 8th, Robert Ogan in 9th, and Leroy Donald rounds out the top 10. Jaden Johnson-Ward in 11th with Matt Critt in 12th, Ben Dexter in 13th. The bronze division pole sitter Ryan Castle in an outright 14th. He's up and ahead of his rival in the bronze championship, Connor Osborne in 15th, Sean McNally in 16th, Milan Picconi in 17th, Perslow in 18th, Camu 19th, and Susie rounds out the top 20. Then behind them, Palumbo in 21st, Rod in 22nd, Nash in 23rd, Alexander from the pit lane, though technically 24th. He will be soon 25th unless anything changes here for John O'Driscoll, looking to start what could very well be 24th. He's on the grid slot for 25th. Oddities out front and out back here. You can see quite the lengthy grid on the starting formation run. We've just under a minute and 20 seconds left to go. Not long from now, we'll be catching on with the 55, as we'll be getting into conversation surrounding the overtaking opportunities, as sparse as they do appear here at Oulton Park. It is a tough, demanding circuit here. Very, very slippery around the edges. Very easy to fall out of line on this track, as we have seen throughout many, many an event. This is a track in the British theatre that drivers will approach with absolute caution. Unlike the next event that we'll be seeing in this championship as part of the British doubleheader, where on July 29th we'll be heading over to the Grand Prix circuit Silverstone on the county lines between Northamptonshire and Buckinghamshire County, home of the British Grand Prix, over on Formula 1 and MotoGP. But for today, we're here at a former non-championship destination in Formula 1, here at Oulton Park. On board then to Fake Galaxy, who heads up this field and is looking a very strong return to form. We didn't see this one for some time here. Back on board with Fake Galaxy, who will head up the field for the start of round 5 today. 1 hour and 15 minutes, 75 minutes in total. As the 55 will soon be given the green light to move away, and will pull away to lead this grid up towards turn 1 on the start of the formation lap. Hanging just under his rear wing there, that's Declan Anderson on the second row alongside Lee Evans. So pulling away goes the McLaren, loosely followed there by the 54, the 9 and the 44 on the first 2 grids of today's session. As I say that, it looked like a little bit of trouble for that Honda to get going. And look at it go and catch on board, just if we can here with the Honda. As we now see, it was a bit of a delayed start there for Carlos Dish. He zips his way up through the field, now out past Davies and Anderson here to reunite with Fake Galaxy at the front row. And this is going to be a very curious head-to-head race here between these two at this front row, because we have seen these two drivers firmly on display in this championship and in its successor series over the last few months. We know what they can do when pushed to it. The 54 playing a huge gamble moving to Honda. In his words, they just needed someone stupid enough to drive it. And while I wouldn't necessarily describe it the same way, it is definitely risky for even a driver of Carlos Dish's caliber, especially given his somewhat flip-flop performance with mid-engine cars. His time spent with Audi in recent weeks hasn't yielded much fruit. But Dish looking strong here in the Honda. He certainly put the times in to match it, but we've seen stability to be a concern in the NSX. Going back on board then to see with the leading McLaren, a car that has stood the test of time in modern GT3. A very dominant figure then, the 720S GT3 Evo has took competition by storm. One of the most influential cars in modern ACC. Alongside the Ferrari 296, the Ford Mustang and the BMW M4. Will now go toe-to-toe with the last of the old guards, the Honda NSX, a bygone era of ACC's meta. But the Honda was still competitive. It would go toe-to-toe at the time with the earlier generations of the Audi R8, as well as the Ferrari 488, earlier generations of the Lamborghini Huracan, the Nissan GTR and the Lexus RCF. up and around Clay Hill. So to discuss the overtaking opportunities we have at our disposal, it would be turn 3 that would stage our first major overtaking opportunity. Turn 1 far too tight. You have to be right on top of your opponent. So turn 3 at Cascades, then running up towards turns 4 and 5. And I say this because more so the case where turn 4 is going to see plenty of drivers slip out wide to that right-hand side, be collected by the grass and taken to the barriers. That presents overtaking opportunities for the others. But again, it is quite error-oriented. Turn 5, then for the run between both chicanes, Britons and Hislops. A good run out of Britons will give you a great run up towards Hislops. And then on the run down here towards turn 16 and 17 will be another major overtaking opportunity here at Oulton Park. On the run to Deer Leap and Lodge Corner. Though, of course, in the other way around. Lodge Corner first, then Deer Leap thereafter. Down towards the line we go then. 24 cars on track, 1 from the pit lane to make 25 in total down towards the line, 12 on one side and on the other. As we head up towards round 5 of the OLR VSR Midweek Championship here from Oulton Park, we're Green and Racing here in Cheshire, and a great start from both leading cars at the front row there from the 55, peeling away from the 54 right behind them though, and on the inside making contact with the Honda was the Porsche of Declan Anderson. A very, very surprising start to things there as we see the cars bunch up from the onboard view here of Connor Osborne. He's got a clear line of sight from down in 17th on the action, spilling down through as McNally gets collected there by, I believe that was I want to say that was Ryan Castle. You can see plenty of drivers, though, spilling out wide. The 28 is himself out wide. That's Chris Davies. Disaster for the Gold Division pole sitter as he's taken out down at Cascades. You can see even more trouble spilling down the way through turn 4. What on earth has happened? The 420 peels its way on through. The 315 right up and alongside the 61 as they make their way through turn 5. That's been bedlam down at the Island Bend. Very, very messy start to today's race. Getting a look back up towards the front row as we see Lee Evans now takes for ransom there the 3rd place spot from Declan Anderson. He backs him right up onto the nose of Antonio Angeletta, who now leads the Gold Division. Charlie Broadfield holds their ground for Silver's lead. Galaxy continues to lead Platinum, but a very messy start to things there. Taking a look further down the order, Fake Galaxy leads the charge over Carlos Dish. Lee Evans now 3rd, Declan Anderson in 4th, and Antonio Angeletta round out the top 5. Charlie Broadfield heads up silver ahead of Jaden Johnson. Ward right behind them is Matt Critt, and Ryan Castle's up into that top 10, so a very strong start by Castle. Owen Camus into the top 10, Ian Oates in 11th, Connor Osborne in 12th, Milan Piconi in 13th, Sean McNally in 14th, John O'Driscoll into 15th. Side by side there, you can see was Giovanni Palumbo, and you can see from behind him was Grady Nzuzi versus Russell Nash. Nash looking for 16th. Actually, I should say he's looking for 17th there as he's having dropped in behind Grady Nzuzi, but drifts right onto the nose there of the Porsche of Leroy Donald. Alan Alexander gets up and ahead here. Kieran Rodd from behind, Robert Hogan, Ben Dexter, Chris Davies, and Lewis Purslow. We do see the number 14 in even further trouble down at Cascades for the 2nd lap going. Further issues for Leroy Donald. Another issue there on the rise for Sean McNally. Of course, now we get to see the scope of how far down through the order he has fallen. Down to 21st. Back on here, off the exit of Britons, for the fight on 3rd place. Lee Evans versus Declan Anderson. Number 9 versus number 44. Now, they are in the same category here. This will pertain to an outright position and a division role for that 3rd place spot. Behind them, the Gold Division lead of Antonio Angeletta and the Silver Division lead of Charlie Broadfield. One of a number of close-by fights on the track at this time. We see here, very close bout of action going on up ahead. Rod, Alexander, Nash, Nzuzi, Palumbo, O'Driscoll, and Piconi. A huge pack of cars roving down through towards Water Tower and Druids. So we see Palumbo was out a little bit wide there at Druids. That opens doors up for Grady Nzuzi, who's trying to put distance between himself and Russell Nash. We see Nash on the offensive there, onto the grass, but Nash is still for the inside on the run up towards turn 16. Can he have it off of Grady Nzuzi? As trouble out back for the 247. It's contact into the wall. Goes Russell Nash. It's disaster on his return to this series. Russell Nash vanquished to the wall. It was super, super close here at turn 16. We see off the exit now. And, I don't really know how to exactly call that one there. That might take a few replays from us. We'll catch on with that a little later on. But that looks to be a very short-lived return for Russell Nash. 9 minutes in. Not even that, sorry. I was thinking of an hour and 20. That's 4 minutes in. and he could very likely be our first DNF of the race. Fade Galaxy leads the charge over Carlos Dish. Lee Evans in third, Declan Anderson in fourth, Antonio Angeletta rounds the top five. Charlie Broadfield in sixth, Jaden Johnson-Ward in seventh. You can see very close action here. Owen Camus versus Matt Critt for eighth place at this time, with Camus in ninth, last round's platinum winner. In our visit to Barcelona, big snap there from the McLaren, done well to hold it. Rounding out the top 10, Ian Oates. Ryan Castle in 11th, Connor Osborne in 12th, John O'Driscoll in 13th, chasing down what looks to be that of Ryan Castle. So that signifies to us, yes, a drop of position there for Connor Osborne. Going in behind John O'Driscoll. Then from behind him, we see this, again, roving pack of cars, and it really can't go any which way. Looking on board with Grady and Zuzi out wide there, I believe. Yes, that was Sean McNally. At Druids, he's done well to collect himself, though. That could have been even worse for him. On the run-up now through to Lodge Corner and Deer Leap. We see here from Grady and Zuzi, it was the site of that accident from before. Came into arms there with Russell Nash, who I am told is now sadly out of this race. Grady and Zuzi looking to try and fend off now from a two-pronged defensive here from Alan Alexander and Kieran Rhodes. We see him through to Cascades, the 144 a little bit deep for the run into that corner. Now allows the Bentley up on the inside on the run up towards Island Bend. This is where it could get messy here for these drivers. Watching now as going a little bit wide there and ultimately forfeiting the ground off to Kieran Rhodes just before turn 5 was Grady and Zuzi. Meanwhile, from behind them, Robert Hogan and Leroy Donald. Up at the head of the field, the battle for third is back on. Evans versus Anderson. From behind them, Angeletta v Broadfield v Johnson-Ward. So it is super, super close in the top 10 at the moment. It has already been a very controversial start, and it's only gone worse. You can see the amount of cars collected there. That's Jaden Johnson-Ward, as well as Matt Critt and Owen Camus. What happened down here? Trying to get a look here when we came onto the crime scene from behind. I believe it, yes, it was contact off the exit of turn 12 up towards turn 13 where this all started. That's collected already plenty enough. Broadfield v Angeletta still close in arms. Evans v Anderson has now given a little bit of distance since their last encounter down at Hislops. Let's got a catch on board with these two. This could be a rather interesting angle to watch from. Going to locate Antonio Angeletta's angle of things. The number one defending that fifth place spot from Charlie Broadfield as the battle for fifth is on. An omnipresent sight in his rear view mirror. That Lamborghini's not letting up. And right at his blind spot here, tucks behind that monstrously large rear wing. Down through here at Britain's. In through to Hislops we go. Now this was the site of that incident from before that collected 3 drivers in the last lap just gone. With Owen Camus, Matt Critt and Jaden Johnson-Ward among them. Solid distance though here by Angeletta, puts nearly a full second on Broadfield. Leroy Donald down a lap but still fighting along with Robert Hogan, Grady and Zuzi and Milan Paconi. Looking to go and catch on board with action from the head of the field here as it's a lonely crowd up front, the 55 and the 54. Fate Galaxy and Carlos Dish reunited on this grid, albeit a broadly different face for the latter of two. Meanwhile, getting a look in here, Evans exchanging ground with that of Declan Anderson. That was out through Old Hall, had the position back off him for the run down through Cascades here at turn 3, but the 44's out wide. Through goes Anderson, up to third place goes the Porsche. Lee Evans won't be taking this one lying down. The 44 picks himself up by his bootstraps here and is back into action very late onto the brakes into turn 5, already regaining some of that recently lost ground to Declan Anderson. Further down the line, Broadfield has started to push back up towards Angeletta for that fight on 5th place. Further down the line, Giovanni Palumbo v Alan Alexander now finds it into the case of Giovanni Palumbo v, by looks of it, Milan Paconi. Kieran Rod, having made quick ground over Palumbo. So that's two of the back row bandits, but the leader of sorts, so to speak, is John O'Driscoll. He's up in 9th. Currently an onlooker to the Camu v Oates fight. I say leader more in a representative case, because he was the one to start this trend off. Up over Clay Hill here at turn 13. Super close action from Owen Camu, but he's already dirtied his hands from the exit of Hislop's chicane. Still not entirely sure exactly how that incident started or how it's going to end here. We see for Grady and Zuzi in the wall there. That's a huge hit. As he touches the grass, it's disaster for the 144. Into the wall goes Grady and Zuzi. It is the smallest blade of grass that can do it to you. We see here up through Water Tower. Watch this here. Now a little bit of desync albeit, but tucks one wheel there. And when he gets under the brakes, the car pitches in, slams the Armco, then into the tyre wall. And that is a big, big, big hit for him at the moment. The yellow flags are out because he is going slow down Warwick Bridge as he tries to limp that car back to the pit lane. That is a very, very rough turn of events for Grady and Zuzi. Down through here at Lodge Corner, then to Deer Leap. Trying to get himself back into the pit lane. Now we're back into green flag conditions. Back up front then. Action from the front lines. Ian Oates still defends from Owen Camu. Meanwhile up front, Angeletta defends from Broadfield. And Anderson, now from that recently accrued third place, defends from Evans. Crip v Davies is one on the cards, but as... Oh, no. I've just seen what's gone on there. That was Davies. The reason the cameras couldn't track him, he was off at turn 4. And that's him possibly, by the looks of it, out of this race. It was a very rough start. And within the first 15 minutes, that could be another DNF on the cards here. A very rough turn of events for Chris Davies. Started on Gold Division pole. And as quickly as his fortunes arrived, they disappeared here in Oulton Park. We are really squeezing a camel through the eye of a needle when it comes to this grid, facing off on a track this claustrophobic. A risk many are willing to accept, but few are willing to see all the way through. Or I'd say not willing, unable to see all the way through. Ongoing fight here. Ryan Castle, Bronze Division lead, two-time bronze winner in the last 2 weeks. Now goes toe-to-toe. The two of the back row bandits, Alan Alexander and Kieran Rod of Euro Titans Endurance. We've seen a few colour schemes from the Bentley. I believe the first iteration of this was a pink cross on that Union Jack design. Now it's the, I believe here, a more minty green. And then we saw a bright, very bright as it would happen to be, mint, almost medical greenish turquoise over on the Sunday League. Of the three we've seen, this is, I'd definitely say, among our favourites here. Green and blue, yes, while it does scream toothpaste colours, it is a very fresh design, no pun intended. 315 still contends here with the 77. He's trying to shake off the 61 as well. Meanwhile, out back, Robert Hogan fights with Matt Critt. Jaden Johnson Wards in 17th, caught in the middle of it all with Dexter and Picconi in front. Alexander still trying to hound Ryan Castle for position out through Druids. It gets a little bit tough there for these two. Both of them clipping the grass, having a slow right down. Kieran Rod tries to take advantage but can't find the room. The Bentley using size to its advantage, albeit allows Rod to gain a position on Castle but doesn't yet gain a position on Alexander himself. And these two could very well be ones to watch. We take a look in here with what's currently going on for the fight of third place. Now 3 seconds apiece for Anderson v Evans. Looking on board here with the recently 10th place 315 Bentley. Now 4.6 seconds from his fellow back row bandit, John O'Driscoll. It's worth noting for Alan Alexander, he did all of this from the pit lane. So a remarkable turn here for the number 315. Albeit there was definitely quite the helping hand from there with just how disastrous that first lap had been for some. Allowed plenty of free positions. It was somewhat of a shopping frenzy here for the 315. Up front is O'Driscoll, now fighting with his fellow Ferrari Ian Oates. Mounting up past Clay Hill in towards Water Tower at turn 14, then the turn 15. We saw a bit of a slide when we caught on with O'Driscoll. 144, we're told, is still in the pit lane. Of course, sizable repair job for that Ferrari. Be surprised if we even see that one getting going again. That was quite the slap for the 144 against the wall. Just looking back onto that replay to explain what exactly we mean here. And that was this huge hit against the wall for Granny and Zuzi. Came out wide after Water Tower. That pitched the car in just before Druids as he got onto the brakes. Car pitched in, slammed the arm coast, then got snagged into the tyre wall as well. A huge impact from earlier on in this race as we just clipped past the first quarter of an hour. 15 minutes in on round 5, a very chaotic turn, and it only gets worse. Yellow flags are out. We can see here the scope of trouble. Milan Picorni, as well as the number 14 of Leroy Donald, both in trouble, and out back that's Sean McNally, I believe we just saw as well. Also collected in the mix down at a big incident at turn 1. Back in the green flags then, as we head up past Britain, seen now from the defending angle of 2, Ian Oates versus John O'Driscoll for 8th place. We see Oates holds the racing line. O'Driscoll goes for the inside, and they touch doors on the run out through to Hislops. That opens doors up here for Alan Alexander, who's been hunting down O'Driscoll since the race started. Let's go to catch on board here, first with O'Driscoll, now to see the attacking angle once again as they come up through turns 13 and 14. Now through to turns 16 and 17. Right now it's an equal distance between Oates and O'Driscoll as it is to O'Driscoll to Alexander. So we are seeing the formation of a 3-way split on that fight for 8th place. Let's go to catch on board just quickly here. We see to Robert Ogan versus Milan Picorni. Ogan for the inside, later of the 2 under brakes in towards Lodge Corner. Great move there by Robert Ogan, getting the leg up on Milan Picorni, who by looks of it is coming into the pits. We see the scope of damage they suffered down at turn 1. And now the number 29 is in. On now to the number 315. He's no longer an observer to this fight for 8th. He is very much a part of it. On board to Alan Alexander. Locally fighting on that 9th position mark with John O'Driscoll, but these two hunt down the same objective. 8th place up in front. We see the 420 rolls on by to let Alexander on through. So now, faced with the fight for 8th place as we head in towards Hislops, we do note the 247 out back in more trouble. And that, I believe, is for, looking here, Ben Dexter, who had some trouble down at turn 4, the Island Bend. We see from Alan Alexander a very rarely seen angle of a car being right-hand drive from over the dashboard. Following here with a 315, right at home then at a British racetrack. Well, we spoke plenty about the Honda being an oddball resurgence, and we spoke more introspectively on Japanese manufacturers making their way back into the series and on the wider scope with the reintroduction on a larger scale for both Lexus and Nissan. But another oddball has been rather prevalent on this grid and a handful of others. The Bentley Continental. Of the still scarcely used assortment of British cars outside of McLaren's quarters, Aston Martin sees even less competition out of the V8 Vantage on Assetto Corsa Competizione. The V12 Vantage has reduced itself to novelty status unless in the hands of an expert. It's Bentley that remains still a likely alternative choice for those still seeking out thrills from a front-engine car and still looking for a British manufacturer, but didn't want to go with the obvious pick of McLaren. We see here the Bentley is a tremendous machine in the hands of Alan Alexander. There have been many like him to step forth into the mix and deliver these knockout performances. A great overtake for 8th place there for Alexander as he makes his way up and around Hislops. We do know there was some trouble down the line at turn 3 for the number 14 car. That's now resolved itself. Great move then, all things considered. As we now see that Ian Oates is rolling on by to let Kieran Rod through, and maybe doing the same here for John O'Driscoll. It's a weird thing to see as well with Alan Alexander's performance, because he has definitely got the makings of a championship driver. And we've made the same claim about Rods, we made the same claim about O'Driscoll, that if they really committed themselves to delivering qualifying performances, I'd have no doubt in my mind they could challenge for a championship, whether on this series or others, where they repeat the same tactic. But it's been, as we've seen, a very bizarre new meta, or I suppose not really meta, but play style here on Assetto Corsa Competizione. On the sort of professional level we try to get out of drivers here, of a smiles per mile tactic, where they're deliberately choosing these weirder options, these less than meta options when it comes to cars or strategies, because it delivers these more entertaining drives. We see quite chief in point is 2 being used at the same time. The choice of an unorthodox vehicle and back row bandits. I mean, that's what we're getting out of these drivers, and time again they have delivered on the most entertaining drives of the race. And we just got word in from someone reporting on behalf of Alan Alexander, and H. Corrigan in our chat at the moment, saying that he's having a whale of a time. No doubt about that one. Started from the pit lane, now 8th place of what was a 25 car field to start, now 23 left to go. Looking here with John O'Driscoll, now fighting with Ian Oates. Half a second between these two. In through to turn 16 and 17. Ryan Castle, we're told, is now in the pit lane, and he's not alone in there as well, because still in the paddock having their car repaired is Grady and Zuzi. Now it's unlikely we'll be seeing them for the rest of this race, following that huge incident for them off the exit of Water Tower and towards Druids. So among the closest fights we have at the moment, it's O'Driscoll v Oates. Further up the order, we have a developing fight for Camus v Angeletta for control of 6th place. But things are going quiet on the first 2 rows. Declan Anderson having taken 3rd from Lee Evans here, funnily enough, at Hislops, as we just see the number 9 head up through now. For Fate Galaxy, it has been a dominant performance. We see him catching up now to Leroy Donald at the back of the field. That 55 has been on flying form. Had to miss out a round last week, and for that reason did not collect on a 4th platinum win in a row, but now back in the saddle, he is definitely looking at the chances here on round 5. In terms of the silver division, definitely a curious development ongoing with this brand new driver on the block, just rounding out the top 5 and 2 seconds clear of the nearest car being Angeletta. It's Charlie Broadfield in the number 18. Now, this has been a curious talk of the paddock, a brand new driver for today's grid, one that we had never seen before here on TRTN, or for that matter on the OLR X VSR Midweek Championship. And this number 18 in the Lamborghini Huracan. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to quickly just pick out certain aspects of the car. I'm fairly certain that is an Evo 2. The front end is what confused me for a moment. And I think that's because the lights are covered, the auxiliaries, which we've got to take a look with another Lamborghini here. I believe Jaden Johnson Ward's one might have the auxiliaries. No, I think it's just Lee Evans then, as we see Jaden Johnson Ward actually drops ground away from Ryan Castle, unlapping himself. So if we've got to check in with the other Lamborghini here, this is Lee Evans, I think we'll get a closer look at those auxiliaries. That's normally our giveaway. Yes, you can see them there. On some of the liveries, though, the official liveries, they cover them up, of course, because they're not necessary. The auxiliary lights are normally used for endurance racing. That's what confused us, but he's come in with Lamborghini, albeit a very difficult manufacturer to get one's head around, especially if they're new to a grid. We have seen drivers take the safer option, so to speak, when they're still fresh to a championship, even if they're experienced. We've seen much more stereotypical options for brand new drivers, but he's took a risk. He's come into this series unknown, and right now is excelling in that silver division. Now, we don't have much on his file. We don't know where he's come from. We don't know what series he's competed in until today. So as far as first impressions go, this is quite a significant leap for the number 18. Definitely going to be one to watch on the second half of the championship. Ben Dexter now fights with Sean McNally down here for 16th as Lewis Perslow gets into the pit lane. In terms of fighting, it's still close for Oates v O'Driscoll. They head up through Druids. at this time back on board to the fight for 10th place. Heading up through now, in towards turn 1, Old Hall. Still watching here with a fire 10th place as they barrel up through Britain's in towards Hislops as they head up the hilltop straight. Out wide there went John O'Driscoll as we just quickly do a few more tweaks there to the audio mastering. Now, there was a bit of an issue earlier on where the mic was way too sensitive for some reason. That's something we'll be definitely looking into as the series progresses. We see then from John O'Driscoll, big leap down through that of Hislops, and that set him off the course to continue to fight for 10th place at this time. Meanwhile, into the pit lane goes the number 17, Connor Osborne, now in to try and play ahead of the tactic. First served of his fellow bronze driver by that of Ryan Castle. Now also into the pit lane goes Owen Camus, last round's Platinum Division winner. Again, still the closest battle rests between these two at this time. Now, second closest is Ben Dexter versus Sean McNally. And a new fastest, oh, not new fastest, sorry, new closest. Still locked into that mindset of qualifying. We're going to look on board here. In the fight for 5th place, Antonio Angeletta on the charge to try and retake a lost 5th position off to Charlie Broadfield. In terms of where things stand in the championship for this one here, Antonio Angeletta from the gold division of this championship stands in 3rd, but currently in the lead of division. Could see him bump up ahead of Chris Davies, who had a disastrous turn of events in the early stages of this race. Ian Oates is only a few positions behind. As far as it stands for him, though, he's a division 2nd in the golds, with Alan Alexander and Kieran Rods, 2 platinum division drivers in between the 2 leading golds. So while Ian Oates will continue to stay in the lead of the championship, Angeletta could be seeing a significant points haul by the end of this round. We see, though, in his efforts to catch up to Charlie Broadfield, and the last lap was 2 tenths slower. Waiting for a slip, waiting for some kind of mistake here from Broadfield. He has to take great care not to make one himself here. When you're preying on instability for the car out in front, maybe don't drive a Porsche. These two cars, they ride a razor's edge when it comes to that proper top end of performance on a track like this, which can be super trying to car stability. It is an older track. It is a little bit bumpier around the edges. It is not so kind on the machines, as we'll find at our next destination here in Great Britain. The finely curated 3.6 miles and 18 turns of Grade 1 tarmac we see over at the Grand Prix Circuit Silverstone. This is anything but. This is some proper old school British motorsports here. The British Touring Car Championship, of which is set to make its return to competition for the 2026 season this week at Thruxton, sees the smaller configuration of this circuit used, I believe it's called the Island Circuit, which has an open hairpin right come up at the Island Bend, which would normally bank round to the left as we've seen today. So they exit just off of Britain's, heading up towards Hislops. We do know also another pit lane went a moment ago, that of Ben Dexter. We also noted an incident down at Britain's for the 420 of John O'Driscoll. That's dropped him even further behind on his chances to catch Ian Oates. We see here now with Angeletta, he's got the chance on that of Charlie Broadfield. They're side by side on the opening straight down towards turn 1. We go at Old Hall. He's on the inside, last of the late breakers from the Porsche, and he bumps the Lamborghini there as he tries to sneak up on him at turn 1. A little bit of contact between the two, but Broadfield drops in behind Angeletta, who now takes helm of the top 5. Alan Alexander smells blood in the water, and you can see he's only right behind that number 18. Lingering over his shoulder there, the battle cruiser, we've called that Bentley for its monstrous scale on the grid. And I think this will be a great example to see exactly the point we're talking about. Going to catch on now with the Bentley as it hounds down the Lamborghini. Lamborghinis, by no stretch of the imagination, are a petite assortment of sports car, but up against the Bentley, they may as well be toys, going toe-to-toe with the Continental. Actually, fun fact, called it the Continental just to refer to the scale of this vehicle's size on the grid. It's a joke, of course. No idea why they named it the Continental, because I don't work at Bentley. Down through Hislop's here, up through to turn 12. Through to Clay Hill. Through Druids, now with Broadfield in his sights. The question therein arises from Charlie Broadfield, where he's already had plenty of fun tangling with fellow categories outside of his own. Will the decision arise to fight the Platinums? We see there, actually anchoring a little bit early. That nearly got him into some trouble for Alan Alexander. That twitch to the left as he was trying to preemptively turn up through turn 17. We see leaving the pits from behind him is Ben Dexter in the 247 McLaren. Broadfield still leading silver. We do note there has been a yellow flag out after, I believe it was of the 2 chicanes. It is, in fact, pardon me, they're Hislop's, and it's for the 92, not the 92, sorry, 96. Robert Ogan, who gets swallowed up behind the pack there, falls in behind Ryan Castle, and I believe that's Milan Picorni that's now just up in front of him now. Back in the green flag conditions, 44 minutes left to go. There are still a handful of fights on track at the moment. This is one among them. In the fight for Perslow v Picorni, you see from behind him there, Robert Ogan. Having recently fallen position, we see that Picorni rolls on by. McNally gets the leg up on him there. As Picorni is still, technically speaking, a lapped car. Broadfield v Alexander. As it stands at this time, you can see in the background there, Ben Dexter gets out wide. That could be a bit of a hampering to the advance of Kieran Rodd. McNally v Ogan. A fight for 14th place there, just on to the trailing end of the 7th row. 43 minutes left to go. Not long from the midway on today's event. Alexander v Angeletta is now on the cards and on board to the Bentley. Having made quick work of Broadfield, now sets his sights on Antonio Angeletta. Up through turn 17, up towards turn 1 we go. You can see just tremendous straight line speed from the Bentley. Cruising right up to the rear bumper on the Porsche. Better run of 2 at Old Hall, but he is very, very wide, so he's got to be careful to plot his moves out here. And you can see just sneaks it in from around the outside at turn 3 from the inside at turn 2. A brilliant move there by Alan Alexander. Now into the top 5 from what was a pit lane start on round 5. Bear in mind, when he's really put to it, this driver has been capable of miracles in the past. A few weeks ago on the NLRL Sunday League, over our coverage of Season 6, our trip to Indianapolis in changeable conditions at a night race at their road course, sort of 3 races, one of which, at the very last of 3, go to Alan Alexander, who started from the back, turned it round to a victory, Bentley's 2nd ever in that series. And Alan Alexander has been a prolific sight on this grid throughout this season for the very same antics. But unlike his time in the Sunday League, this one is yet to yield an outright victory. But I think there's only a matter of time. With Silverstone, Suzuka and Misano left on the calendar, there are still plenty of opportunities ahead of us here. And the talks of the championship won't begin for, I'd say, at least 2 more weeks. Declan Anderson now in the pit lane. We've just got on wind of that as well from progress in the pit lane. Anderson in, so Evans moves up to 3rd, Alexander to 4th, Angeletta to 5th. And so on and so forth further down through the order there as the number 9 short to get off the jacks in the pit lane. We see here from Declan Anderson. And A much longer stop than anticipated in the pit lane there for the number 9. Joining him now is John O'Driscoll from the paddock. And I believe that is somewhat of a soft exit we see there from the still stationary 144. Just as O'Driscoll gets to a stop, Anderson is out of the pit lane. As it stands then, 40 minutes left to go. And of that top 10 at this time, there is about to be some broad changes among them with Anderson and O'Driscoll in that mix. As now, continuing to lead that charge goes Fake Galaxy. We saw from in the background there, into the pit lane went Robert Ogan. Carlos Deesh in second, Lee Evans in third, Alan Alexander into fourth, Antonio Angeletta to fifth, Charlie Broadfield in sixth, not 16th there. I was still reading further down the order. Seventh for Kieran Rod. Ian Oates in 8th place there. Giovanni Palumbo to a surprise 9th. Declan Anderson, by looks of it, yes, does round out that top 10, because you can see behind him there in 11th is Jaden Johnson-Ward, who's done well to pull things back round since his incident down at Britain's, and his lots, I should say, as well. You see here, more trouble confounded for Angeletta. Almost a mirror match of the incident that got Broadfield down and out of that, what was a top 5 for him. We now see he'll move up ahead of Angeletta. As Angeletta darts to the pit lane the moment he saw that issue arise. The number 1 now in. No updates yet from either of the top 3 on considerations for a pit lane run. We'll go to see in with the number 88. Giovanni Palumbo elects to stay out. Number 9, nearest to the line from behind him. That'll be for Declan Anderson. Of course, we had already seen them to the pit lane, so now gaining position on Angeletta. Here's out of Declan Anderson, moving up to 9th, but he's out wide there onto the grass. Can he hold the car? Yes, he can. Not for nothing then. If GT3 doesn't work out for him, Rallycross is always an available window. Takes a lot to keep the Porsche steady on tarmac. It takes a great heap more to do so on the ground. Oh, not the ground, sorry, on the grass. I was trying to say the gravel, but there's not really much gravel at all here at Oulton Park, save for that one gravel patch that was just slightly off screen as we head in, and that one there as well. Actually, there is quite a lot of gravel on the circuit, but mostly grass. Speaking of gravel as well, and a very weird segue, I understand, but heading in towards Silverstone, it is going to be somewhat of a fear for these drivers, because the gravel pits, unlike most of these circuits here in Great Britain, are incredibly deep. If you've ever been on a track walk at Silverstone, do take care not to tread too heavily in towards that gravel, because, well, yes, you're not going up to your shins in it. It is going to be quite deep, and it is very difficult to wheel anything through there. So imagine when you put some 1,200, 1,300 kilo GT car all the way into the gravel, you're not to be too surprised how they can't get themselves back out. Well, I think the gravel here is a little bit shallower than at Silverstone's. The drivers still do have to take care to avoid it. Giovanni Palumbo is latest into the pit lane. We see the number 88 into his pit box now. Still no word yet from the top 3. We could be seeing developments on that as we head ever closer to the halfway.
Still a long way to go.
How about that? Great timing from us. 37.5 minutes left to go in this race. We are now past the halfway mark, and Fake Galaxy stays out. What of Carlos Deesh, though, becomes the next question. The top 3 heavily under the scalpel here for analysis. Who will pull the trigger first on this one? We see the Honda does look to be struggling there off the exit of turn 16 and 17, so it's no surprise Deesh is now in. But what of Evans? Making his way through turn 16 and 17. That's been a good litmus test so far for if the mid-engine cars are struggling as they dominate the top 3. Evans stays out. Alexander would be next under the knife here, but where we had seen pit stops before from the 420, we have yet to see anything of the sort from the 315 or the 61. Number 18. The new silver on the block, Charlie Broadfield, is now into the pit lane, but he's got to take care to not speed into the pit lane. Very quick stop there for the number 18. We saw off in the background, just leaving now, was Giovanni Palumbo. In the number 88, there's trouble down the line for the 96, and in the gravel there. So, rather topical with our conversation about the gravel traps and how scarce they are. When you do get into them, it is a tough going here. The number 96 is in, and he is not getting out. Robert Ogan could be out of this race by the looks of it. It wouldn't come as too much a surprise. And there's been another incident here. Charlie Osborne at turn 4 has come into the wall, then to the gravel. Is there going to be damage on him there? If there's no damage over that front, he may have just thread the eye of a needle between two of the... Oh my God, he has! Well, he is lucky, but... No, see, the Ben Dexter's not particularly the happiest to have seen what he would say is an unsafe rejoin from the 17. He got right onto his nose as he left there through turn 5. As for the 96, Robert Oulton still remains stationary, so there is a current yellow flag for Sector 1 at this time. Until we have any further updates on the 96, Galaxy still leads. Evans now to second with that recent pit stop for Carlos Dish. We are now told he has emerged from that pit lane a time ago there, as we're back at a green flag conditions, and he is 6th place, so up and ahead of Anderson, so that still is secured for him. A front row likely on the cards. Kieran Rodd. Are we likely to see this one to the pit lane? No, as it would stand to be the case. Up through Deer Leap. Stays out. As for Ian Oates, making his way through to turn 17, and still no Dykes on a run to the pit lane. So we have a notable number of drivers trying to hold out for a longer strategy today. At a curious development here at Oulton Park. We'll see if the next driver liable to come into the pit lane. This is Jaden Johnson-Ward, made his debut to this series not too long ago. And into the pits goes the 363 from the Gold Division. You see there, he got it down to a screeching halt. He was not looking to pick up any penalties today. He's done very well to keep himself out of trouble so far. He has been in a spot of bother down at Hislops earlier today. But that's been about the worst of it for the 363. As far as gold goes, he stands in behind that of Ian Oates. And by looks of it here, just having a little glance around everything, he'll fall in behind Antonio Angeletta. And I believe the next gold target in range, I believe, is out of the mixture here. That would have been otherwise Chris Davies. So Jaden Johnson-Ward, not for nothing, is still going to be seeing a pretty solid division result. We see there the Lamborghini of Broadfield. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we just saw him into that pit lane, so what on earth is he doing back in? The number 18, and this could massively fall apart in his hands here if he wants to continue to hold on to that Silver Division lead. Matt Critt, who is currently 2 laps down, if I'm not mistaken. That's what it says there. Is he about to overtake Charlie Broadfield, being the real question? As Broadfield now hemorrhages position from out of the top 10. This sudden development has raised many an eyebrow. The 247 is now in trouble. Ben Dexter, off of Druids, is now going slow. I believe it was just a bit of a half spin for him there. Broadfield on his way back out, but it still raises many questions. What on earth was going on there? Because now Broadfield has lost that Silver Division lead. Matt Critt moves up into the Silver Division lead. Right behind him, though, the recently emerged 363 of Jaden Johnson-Ward. And now our thoughts of pit lane strategy rest in that top 5, away from action out behind the top 10. Fate Galaxy, as it would stand, is staying out according to our radar. The next under the scalpel would be the 44, but he's just on the run up through turn 13 at Clay Hill at this time. We see this is one of the closer fights on track. For 11th place, Jaden Johnson-Ward versus Matt Critt. From behind them, Giovanni Palumbo. Number 44 would be next under the knife here, and seeing from Lee Evans what is the strategy he chooses to employ, staying further out. Next would be Alexander, then not too far off his trails would be the 61 of Kieran Rodd. For Alexander, staying out. Through to turn 16 and 17, Kieran Rodd. It's worth noting as well, Ian Oates has got company here, because right on his rear bumper, you can see there, that's Carlos Dish, followed by Broadfield. So Dish is going to get side by side up and ahead of Ian Oates on the run up through to turn 16 as Oates lets him on by. What's the calling here for Oates? He's angling over to the right hand side, so now into the pit lane goes the number 6, the latest into the paddock goes Ian Oates. Right, as it stands at this point here, it is looking very, very likely for Antonio Angeletta to be seeing his way to a Gold Division win today. That number 1 has to keep himself firmly out of trouble for the remainder of this race. Looking back into those gold standings for Angeletta, things are by the looks of it, really only getting better for him at this time. With Ian Oates now into the pit lane, that should take note as well. Following him in there was the 55 of Fake Galaxy, but with Ian Oates in the pit lane, he forfeits position to that of Antonio Angeletta. And further down the line, the nearest target to him at this time is going to be, by the looks of it, yes, that of Jaden Johnson-Ward. But we already saw there from Oates a very brisk stop for the number 6, so he's on his way out and will settle for just having lost the position off in his own category there to Antonio Angeletta, who is still looking to be on the cards to usurp a possible second place following that DNF for Chris Davies. Now also in the pit lane, as Fake Galaxy makes his departure, is Lee Evans. Joining these two as well will be Alan Alexander. Kieran Rodd could be the one that stands out against the most of them, so making his way out and up into second for the time being as Rodd plays the later game. 30 minutes left to go here in Oulton Park as things continue to hot up here in Cheshire. Jaden Johnson-Ward, you can see, is committed to this constant charge up towards Matt Critt, but is struggling to keep wind with that 92. Now the Silver Division lead for round 5 of the championship. Alexander about to make his leave of the pit lane here. The 315, I'd say there is still a chance for him to see a podium in today's event, with Kieran Rodd still the one outstanding driver to not take a run of the pitch just yet, just with under 30 minutes left to go. We are given information there that Ryan Castle is now into his pit box, and this is his second pit stop of today. He already took his mandatory pit stop a time ago, and that does leave things open for a possible intercept by Connor Osborne. It really does depend on how long that tenure in the pit is going to take. As we now also see in here, if he wasn't already in, we now get to see is that of Lewis Purslow. A very confusing development indeed. We do see some trouble here for Matt Critt as he drops in not only behind that of Jaden Johnson-Ward, but now also Giovanni Palumbo. And it's Palumbo to the lead of Silver, much to the dismay of Matt Critt. That was just off of Druids on the run up to Warwick Bridge. So it does raise a few questions as to what exactly did happen for Matt Critt. Was it just trouble at turn 15? It has been a rather common case. It's worth noting here, Lee Evans played an absolute blinder on strategy because he is, as it stands right now, up and ahead of Carlos Deesh. So too is that of Declan Anderson. These two have played things super close to the chest, and right now could be a denying force to Deesh's procession to a podium today, as Declan Anderson is on the cards under strategy at this time to overtake Kieran Rodd. Actually, if that is, oh no, sorry, I get Anderson and Critt mixed up so often because the 92 and the 9 share a common color scheme there, the black and purple. It's very easy to get the two mixed up in a vacuum. Lee Evans now on a provisional podium in platinum, but he has got to hold off an enraged Carlos Deesh. This is a curiosity indeed. Let's go to catch on with the Honda as he fights with the rest of the grid. The 96 is more than definitely a DNF now, if that wasn't already the case for the number 96 stranded down at Cascades. Going to catch the 54. This is an angle to watch on with Carlos Deesh pursuing the rest of the podium. Still waiting on that arrival to the pit lane for the number 61. The 55 still leads, so Fake Galaxy looks on the cards for a return to winning form in this series after a departure from last round. We see here for Deesh, he's all over the back end of Evans. He's clinging to him like a bad habit here on the run up through turn 14, then to turn 15 out in front of them, just eclipsed by the sight of that Lamborghini. Was a little bit of a wide run there for this one. Ben Dexter, who yields to the oncoming 44 and 54 on the run up towards Lodge Corner. Watching on then with the fight of 4th place. And this is incredibly intense to see here. A bit of a snap off of turn 1. Not enough to set him away for too long, but that has created a bit of a breaker here for the 44. Now a full second over Carlos Deesh, temporarily halting that fight on 4th as they head up through Cascades. You see here for Owen Camus, this has been a curious drive for him because he did set a time in qualifying. Camus has had to, much like several of the deliberate back row starters of today's event, has had to claw his way up through this grid with just under 26 minutes to go. He's in that top 10, but that may not last forever, as that is the worst time to be seeing anything progress-wise, with a drive-through penalty now given to the 13 following that run over the track limits at turn 1 at Old Hall. That is horrible commentator's curse. We see here trouble for, and yes, that is Charlie Broadfield. As we see quite a significant bit of damage as Anderson is right on him there, trying to make his way up past. Caught in the headlights of the number 9. The number 18 very nearly pushed Declan Anderson right into the iron sights of both Lee Evans and Carlos Diescher. But it's a super tense triple header for the fight on what is currently third place, soon to be second, whenever we do eventually see this one here. Kieran Rodd to the pit lane. 25 minutes to go here in Oulton. Rod evidently still feeling confident on those tyres, but you can see the car may not be reflecting much the same sentiment as the driver. Number 13 in trouble, so we do have yellow flags out, and it's caught up with the 77. So the number 13, Owen Camus, now back into the pit lane. The 77, Ryan Castle, also caught up in the fray down at turn 12. That's disaster for Ryan Castle. Connor Osborne was not long out of this race, and Ryan Castle could join him. As it stands to be the case here, the bronze drivers could go extinct once more. I believe this is the second week that's happened. Alarming events then from the bronze division. Meanwhile, the fight for silver is still on. Palumbo v Crit, Porsche v Porsche, 88 and 92, fighting for what is an outright 11th, stands at the head of the silver division for today's category win. Meanwhile, it's all-out war. Anderson, Evans and Diesch, Porsche, Lamborghini and Honda. Kieran Rodd is now in, so that sets the stakes here for what is soon to be a fight on second. Meanwhile, Palumbo v Crit down through Cascades up towards Island Bend. Porsche v Porsche. Through to turn 5 they go, and we snap between these two fights here as we see another snap at turn 1 for Carlos Diesch. Lee Evans holds ground firm in the middle here, but it's Declan Anderson now spearheading that charge up from second, with Kieran Rodd having just dropped from the jacks. Will emerge behind these three, could very well emerge from behind the number 1. Actually, as it stands to be the case, could even emerge behind that of John O'Driscoll. Rodd is now off the limiter, just up through turn 1. So he does escape O'Driscoll for now. We'll see how that pans out over the course of the next 22 minutes of racing. Going to catch on board with that fight at the head of the field. Now, this is where things could get very intense. We see here a good exit from Britons, leaves Diesch to the outside. Last of the late breakers trying to get up and around the 44, but he's cut off. Forced to jump over the chicane there. The 54 is not the most pleased about it. You can see on the replays, there really wasn't much room for him to go. So he'd be hard-pressed to want to give that position back. Heading up in towards there, you can see there was no route he could have gone besides either the emergency runoff or the grass. A tough decision to call there, but number 54, I'd say, is unlikely to be giving anything back this late on in the race. 22 minutes just under left to go. You see the amount of corrections needing to be done here by Carlos Diesch just to get the car down through Cascades. I mean, let's go and watch back on board here quickly before we check on him with some of the other fights, namely the one up for the Silver Division lead. It was down through Cascades that really caught my eye there, the amount of corrective maneuvers taken to keep that Number 54 NSX facing the right way. We're watching through Britain's as well. Fairly soft input. You can see a little bit of a snap there just to get the car a little wider. He didn't want to cut too much on the inside, otherwise that could have been an inquiry by the stewards for track limits. That's the same thing that caught out just a moment ago, that of Owen Camus. So as he gets onto the power is where the car gets really skittish, and that doesn't help when he gets up over the curbs off the exit of turn 12. We'll catch some of these drivers later. Let's go to catch, though, with the Porsches contesting the Silver Division lead. As it stands, though, it's been a very recent downturn for Matt Critt. Originally was fighting with Giovanni Palumbo. And taking a look at things right now as we drop into the last 20 minutes, Palumbo now holds about 5 seconds over Matt Critt. As far as things stand now, Fake Galaxy leads over Declan Anderson in second, Carlos Deesh in third, Lee Evans in fourth, Alan Alexander in fifth, Antonio Angeletta in sixth, Kieran Rodd in seventh, John O'Driscoll in eighth, Ian Oates in ninth, and Jaden Johnson Ward rounds out the top 10. Giovanni Palumbo in 11th, with Matt Critt in 12th, Sean McNally in 13th, Milan Picorni in 14th, Leroy Donald in 15th, Ben Dexter in 16th, Lewis Purslow in 17th, Robert Ogun and Gradian Zuzi provisional DNFs from 18th and 19th. So of a 25 car race, we are down a startling number there to have dropped 8 drivers down to only 17 left. Actually, that the maths does not... Yes, the maths does check out. I am not stupid. It is 8 drivers that have dropped away. Has been a very, very tough race for many. We called it from the start. This is a very claustrophobic track. We are forcing a camel through the eye of a needle when it comes to putting 25 cars on this rough and ready crowd of the OLR VSR Midweek Championship on a track this claustrophobic, this tight for margins. One slip over the line, as we've already seen several times today, can spell doom. Such was the case of the 144 earlier today, right here on the run through Druids. In terms of your division leads at this time, Fake Galaxy leads Platinum. Looking further down the line with Angeletta leading in gold, silver led by Palumbo, and bronze extinguished from this event. So it certainly does come as a curiosity when we went back through the notes. If I'm not mistaken, round 4 saw no bronze drivers lead that race, or win that race, I should say, in their category. So Ryan Castle was given a win by default as the last of the surviving ones before he too with DNF. Was that the case? And I think that might also be something that goes on record here, but that is quite startling. And as we mentioned earlier in the stream, there may very well be calls into the next season for a significant rework to the tiering system, because right now it's gold, silver and platinum that are really the only categories showing up by more than a handful. Even gold is negotiable here when you consider that the platinum drivers massively outnumber them. Of the golds you have in today's event, you have Angeletta, you have Oates, and you have Johnson Ward. You had Nzuzi, and you had as well earlier Davies. So that makes what, 5 cars? Oh, you also had no, because Nash was a platinum. So yes, that was about 5 golds for the run in towards today's event. Whilst we've got a bit of a gap then in the battles, as there is one still on the build up for Anderson v Deesh. Some updates to some recent events, and as we follow on board here, off in the background goes Carlos Deesh. Can he hold it, being the real question? We do also see some trouble there for, I believe that was Leroy Donald from the point of view of Ian Oates. So it's going to catch on board with a Honda as it stands now, 2.1 seconds from Anderson. In terms of recent events going on then, of course, some of you may have been surprised to find that there was no round earlier today for the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. We were set to make a double-header round here at Oulton Park. We were going to be visiting the GT4s in the early hours of the morning today, and then today would have been our second of 2 visits to Oulton Park up in the GT3s. Would have given us a wonderful contrast to racing between the 2 largest categories we cover here on TRTN, but sadly that was delayed due to inclement weather conditions surrounding their Washington DC server stack. Sadly meant that the servers would be far too unstable for them to want to risk having an event go ahead and have to end under red flags. They would consider it an unfair approach to things and would much rather delay to next week. So that's where it stands for GT4 at the moment. Now, some of you may have also been curious as to have found out what happened for NLS2 on VPR. Of course, we were set to cover that not too long ago. Well, if you've checked our social media via the TRTN Instagram account at True Racing TV Network on Instagram, you would have seen on our stories a case where we've just made the announcement earlier today that now has been replaced with an event over at Watkins Glen. More information hopefully to follow beyond when it's just set to restart. We'll have that to you in a moment as we continue to watch here with Carlos Dietz. Just about a quarter of an hour coming up left in today's event. What we do now understand of what was originally planned to be NLS2, so that was going to feature GT4, GT3, GT2, Porsche Cups and M2s, as well as a handful of other various machines, namely some Ferrari Challenge cars were set for an arrival there. But as far as things are now known, it will be a two-class event, and I believe GT3 and GT4 is currently their going pick, and the event will restart, at least this is us reporting from local time. This will be on August 8th, 2026, 5 a.m. BST. Otherwise, August 7th, 2026, at I think it was around 7 or 8 p.m. PDT. I think that's the time frame we were told there, but reporting in British summertime, that's about 5 a.m. on the 8th. So that's when that will be restarting, so about a week from now. Away from the conversation on recent events and updates here from us on TRTN, we're still in on today's race as the gap continues to shrink between Carlos Dietz and Declan Anderson. What has been a brutal day here at the Oulton Park International Circuit. Rather ironically named, given the fact that this circuit currently being used today is part of a track that mostly sees racing on national fronts. We spoke a while ago about its presence in British touring cars, the Island circuit, the one they use for the BTCC. And the fastest ever time that was set on that configuration was a 1:23.934. Now, of course, it's going to stand heaps ahead of these cars that have to cover plenty of extra corners. So that's not the frame of comparison, but it's rather curious that that time has yet to be beaten some 26 years later, because that was set during the illustrious era of Super Touring and the 2000 British Touring Car Championship set by Gabriele Tarquini. In terms of this circuit, the International, GB3s are the fastest things you'll find on here. Joseph Loeb did the fastest time in 2023 at 1:28.619. In terms of GT3s, though, Sven Muller has been the fastest around this track in all-time records. That was during the 2025 Oulton Park British GT round. He did a 1:33.380. When you go and stack that up against this one here, his best lap of the race so far from that of Carlos Dietz has actually not been too far off the all-time lap record here at Oulton Park. So hats off to that Honda. Fastest time though, 1:33.132, is above that record, and that's by Fake Galaxy, driving in the McLaren 720S number 55. Making our way then through at his lops here to turn 12. 12 minutes left to go. Galaxy continues to lead, so going back on with the fight from the point of view of Carlos Dietz as he continues to hunt down Declan Anderson for second in today's race. He got up past Lee Evans not long ago and is slowly but surely chipping away at the gap on the number 9. And it's been a fascinating thing to watch on a very rarely seen angle in the modern scope of Assetto Corsa Competizione to get on board the car as rare as the Honda NSX. A car that I think was just let down by the circumstances of its time. The second gen NSX by all accounts is a great car, but it was let down by badge engineering, and the price tag it attempted to retail itself at meant that it stepped firmly on the toes of the wider European market, of which Honda reluctantly tried to sell this car off to. The kind of folks with money for a second-gen NSX when it retailed back in the late 2010s with the same kind of money for an Audi R8, a Lamborghini Huracan, a Ferrari 488, at a squeeze, and any variety of Aston Martin. No matter how sophisticated they try to make this machine, they were barking up the wrong tree in the Euro market. This thing was quite a survivor when it came to local motorsports. The GT300 and GT500 class of the Japanese Super GT series did see prolific use of the Honda NSX. Honda now vies up their options with the Civic and now the Prelude in the GT500 class, but the GT300s will still continue to see use here from the NSX, so it is still the home ground hero that its forefather, the first-gen Honda NSX, was. And that's really something we'd quite like to dive into. The GT500s, I mean, if you've ever watched a Japanese Super GT race, they are quite something else. Those GT500s, the last of the old guard, last of the Class 1 touring cars, we were robbed of the opportunity to see them any further in the European theatre as they were phased out of DTM. We see here, away from conversation, reminiscing on the Class 1s gone by. Here in the era of GT3, we just nearly saw a move from Carlos Dietz on Declan Anderson. You see that Porsche is all over the shop out through Britain's. The tyres starting to wear on a little bit for Anderson. Dietz knows this and he's looking to take advantage wherever he can. He's super late on the brakes. It's rare to see anyone attempt to outbrake a Porsche. Number 32, I believe that's Lewis Purslow with a drive-through penalty. Even further issues then after what has already been a very muddy day for the 32. 9.5 minutes left to go. We are functionally in the talks here, about 7 more laps. 8 at a squeeze before the end of today's event. Could even be less than that. I think we're still on the grass for about 7 laps here. It was going to be 6 with an overlap for the 55, who currently exits through his laps. We saw a great slide there by Carlos Dietz out through turn 1 as he continues to wrestle control from that Honda. You can see as he gets onto the power from Cascades, there's these little corrections here and there where he just twitches the wheel a little bit to the right, sawing ever so slightly for more grip. The Honda, like many mid-engine cars in GT3, is not something that can be afforded to be used aggressively. That'll be the same story for that Porsche up in front. These are not the kind of cars where you can go and attack the corners and be very aggressive about it, because they will spit you right back out if you mess around a little too hard. They are running the razor's edge for this fight on second place. Alan Alexander now gets up past Lee Evans in recent news there, with Evans now having dropped in behind Alexander. So from where it stands at the moment, 5 different manufacturers in the top 5 alone. McLaren, Porsche, Honda, Bentley and Lamborghini. A very bizarre top 5 ensemble. In terms of the nearest fights, Dietz v Anderson is still one on the cards here. It's worth keeping an eye on possible progress, as I say that, with some trouble off the exit of Britons for John O'Driscoll in his efforts to catch up to 7th places. Antonio Angeletta leading that gold division in the 01. This is still then, as far as it would stand, the closest fight on track as we go to catch on with the 54 once again. We see there he's sliding his way around turn 1. He has to be very careful, because as the car slips, you saw it snap back in the opposite direction. So this is all razor sharp control from Carlos Dietz. You can see snaps the wheel back and forth. There's just so much going on behind that dashboard for this one here. There have been rumors aplenty flying around that Carlos Dietz was going to be leaving Audi. And it was certainly a curiosity to see Honda come up more than once in the conversation surrounding it. You see there a bit of trouble off of Britons. Seeing it now as pen meets paper and Dietz gets behind the wheel of the raucous NSX, it is quite a thing to see, but the question remains, unlike his campaign spent with Ford, or with, for that matter, with Mercedes, or even at a squeeze in the early stages of his time spent with Audi, Does he have the longevity to do a full championship with a car this spiteful to his very being? Because you can see that Honda is not happy in the corners. Turn 1, turn 3. Even had a squeeze there through turns 7, 8, and 9. This is not a car particularly happy to be corralled around Oulton Park. Lord only knows what it's going to do at other tracks that are even more trying, like Bathurst, where it already put the Audi straight through the ringer. 6 minutes left to go. And this has now become more so mandatory than it is habit. He is having to slide that car through turn 1 or it simply will not rotate enough. He's met with a very risky decision, oversteer or understeer, and he's choosing the former over the latter, knowing that for just turn 1, he's got enough in the tank there to control it. As for Fake Galaxy, 5.5 minutes to the line here, so doing the rough maths, we are on the cards for about 4 more laps. There was trouble out back for the 247. Ben Dexter brings out the yellow flags. We are now back in the greens, though, as he gets back up and running, and he rejoins the track just up in front of our ongoing fight as it enters a new chapter. The fight for second, Anderson v Deesh. Anderson has put up a very solid job of things here. It's worth noting, much like Carlos Deesh, we are expecting a broad change of horizons here for Declan Anderson. He is, or at least has been, floating the idea of a vehicle swap. We saw it already executed over on the Sunday League with the move to Lexus, and that has already yielded quite a fair positive run of results, albeit he had a bit of a rough exit to things in the last round just gone. We see here the fight for second still firmly on. Deesh looks for the inside. The door is getting narrower and narrower. Will it close on him on the run up through to turn 16? We see Anderson forced all the way to the outside as he falls in behind. Carlos Deesh up to second. Up and around dearly we go at turn 17 onto lap 44 of round 5. Deesh had to get his elbows out there. The car is against him. Fate is against him. And the number 1 now in trouble. Let's go to catch on if we can here with the number 1 car. That's for Antonio Angeletta. This could be detrimental for his endeavours in the Golds division, because right now it does drop him onto the doorstep of the number 6, his rival in gold, Ian Oates, the one he's been trying to outscore, trying to chip up onto his shoulder as Oates continues to lead that gold championship. Once again, taking a look in towards those standings, with Oates before today's round having led by 8 points over Davies. Davies is going to drop down through the order following his DNF. Angeletta looks to inherit second, but he was trying to make the most of a situation like this and try and put a few points on Oates himself. But if he falls any further behind, he'll lose that advantage entirely. As for Jaden Johnson Ward, 6th in the championship at the moment and looks to get up and ahead of Grady and Zuzi by the end of today's round. All of that to follow, though, for the run-up towards our second of 2 destinations here in the British leg of the championship when we head to Silverstone. Anderson still clings on to Deesh here. You can see Alexander is not too far away. He's got a whiff of a podium. And the 315 is in hot pursuit. This could really hot up to be quite an interesting fight on our hands. We do see Evans getting up past Matt Critt as we try to go and locate Declan Anderson. Watching here with a Porsche. V6 versus flat 6 for second. Out behind them, though, is 8 cylinders and 4 litres of twin turbo fury from that Bentley. Only 0.9 of a second away now. Alexander is on closing distance. He's got the lock on the number 9. Closing in hard as he tries to build a gap here. Anderson also trying to catch up towards Carlos Deesh. Half a second between these two. They come up onto a fight between, by looks of it, Picorni and Dexter. Picorni is staying out ahead. Dexter folds to one side there to allow these 3 on through. Going to the high side of turn 5. 2 minutes left to go, so we are onto the penultimate lap from the 55's angle. As not long from now, we'll be seeing the... Oh, big leap there onto the grass. Picorni dives out of the way to let those 3 on past. We quickly see here from Ben Dexter trying to get the leg up on Picorni to unlap himself. Now looking from Deesh's point of view. Anderson now in behind him. Anderson still trying to claw up towards this Honda, now having returned to the front row following their move. Down at turn 16, the lap prior, as we are short to head on to that final lap from the 55. Speaking of, we see he's joined by John O'Driscoll on the run up the hilltop straight in towards Hislop's. O'Driscoll poked his nose to the inside there, but the 55 denies any interest in fighting with the 420. 2 worlds apart though for those two, as it would stand as we head up in towards the penultimate lap from these three. This very close at hand fight on the podium, with Deesh now taking command of second. It is riding on the heavy expectations now for that of Declan Anderson to preserve a chance at the podium here. He's got the 315 right on his rear bumper. For Alan Alexander, I don't think there's any contest here in him being driver of the day. That 315 started from the paddock, right now stands shoulder to shoulder with Declan Anderson for a fight on the podium at the end of round 5. We are now on to that final lap as confirmed a moment ago. The 55 has just entered its swan song lap. We'll be catching on board the Fate Galaxy not long from now. We just see him there off the exit of turn 3. Carlos Deesh holds the ground up and ahead of Anderson and Alexander. And these three get one more stab at things before the end of today's race. And now the story lasers in on these two for the fight on the podium. Alan Alexander versus Declan Anderson, up through Clay Hill, now through Water Tower to Druids. Meanwhile, for the 55, he makes his way up towards Hislop's. Up in front, the 32's off in the gravel, and that creates enough of a blindside here to allow Alan Alexander to go side by side with Declan Anderson from turn 16 up through turn 17. The Porsche still has the Bentley, but the Bentley will have the Porsche on the straight up towards turn 1. He's going to have to leap for it. Not many more chances exist here, and he fails to find it as Anderson, last of the late breakers, holds his ground. A remarkable turn in their fight for third. And they still have plenty of track left to cover, some 14 corners, as we go to catch on board with that of Fate Galaxy. On board with the 55, took a sabbatical in the last round, but he's back in the saddle to winning form. The checkered flag is out at round 5. Fate Galaxy wins in Oulton Park. A formidable drive then by the Austrian talent, the 55, back on form. A week out from performance in this championship, but he's back in the commander's seat. Great stuff from Fate Galaxy. But the story still remains on that podium. Meanwhile, conversation surrounding the gold division sees Antonio Angeletta take the division win in the number 01 in gold. Meanwhile, for Giovanni Palumbo, a curious story brews for him. He could very well be looking at the chances. I believe this would be for Palumbo, his first silver of the season. Meanwhile, Carlos Deesh continues to hold the con here on second. He's done well to fight out past Alexander and Anderson following an adverse pit strategy, as well as Evans for that matter, I should say as well, who currently finds himself stuck in behind Giovanni Palumbo. But in the story of that fight on third place, you can see Anderson was already moving over to try and cover off an advance by Alexander. It's going to be down to the wire with these two as Carlos Deesh up in front of them heads to the line to take second place. Who comes out on top for the podium? It will be Anderson, with Alexander behind. A very easy driver of the day from the 315 for his performance. Pit lane start to 4th. Lee Evans rounds out the top 5. Admirable performance there by Lamborghini. Kieran Rodd will be looking at 6th, though Driscoll 7th, Angeletta 8th, Oates 9th, and Johnston Ward in 10th. Just across the line a moment ago, Giovanni Palumbo wins in silver. What a performance by Palumbo. Just quickly getting a look back through. That is his first silver of the season, so hats off there. Leveraged the chaos of action today. Giovanni Palumbo on his first silver win of the season. Brilliant, brilliant stuff there. As the checkered flag descends, we see at the end of this race a heavy death toll for DNFs. Camus, Broadfield, Castle, Osborne, Ogun, Davies, and Zuzi and Nash. Of a 25-car grid, only 17 stand at the checkered flag. Your division winners at the end of round 5 of the OLR VSR Midweek Championship in the Platinum Division. Fate Galaxy back on form in Platinum. In the Gold Division is Antonio Angeletta in the number 01. In the Silver Division, the last of our finishing categories, is a first for Giovanni Palumbo. What a performance then by these three parties and all the drivers that which surround them. A brilliant fight all the way to that checkered flag we see there for what was Anderson v Alexander. That was really quite hats off stuff. The 315 pit lane start to 4th, so close. He was within arm's reach there 378 thousandths, the closest finish on today's race for that command of third place. Carlos Dish took a huge risk moving to Honda, and we saw it wasn't the easiest of cars to drive for the Swiss talent, but he still proved it necessary to make second out of today's performance. Super strong performance in the number 54, but Fake Galaxy back in command. What a drive. Very controversial round with quite a lot of drama out back. Of course, was the sad turn of events for Charlie Broadfield. He was on such prosperous hopes in silver, but it all came crumbling down. The bronze division extinguished in this race, and was, of course, the very controversial start that within only a handful of laps of the race and within the first 5 minutes saw Russell Nash off of a highly anticipated return out of this race. Oh, your final result in there on the left-hand side. We discussed a moment ago your division winners and your driver of the day here on screen, the 315 of Alan Alexander. Pit lane start to fourth as he celebrates alongside his comrades, John O'Driscoll and Kieran Rod. O'Driscoll finished 7th, Rod 6th at the end of this race. And what a round it's been here at Oulton Park, and we're not quite done on the British Isles. Taking a look on the calendar then, our third and final stop in Great Britain as part of the sort of British double header here at rounds 5 and 6 will take us to the county lines in Northamptonshire and the Grand Prix Circuit Silverstone. July 29th then, round 6 of the championship coming up next week as we head even further into the second half of this championship. And what a round it's been today. If you're joining us later on this week, our third event of the week is going to be coming from that of the NLRL Sunday League. The season finale, season 6, round 10, comes live from the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, 6:30 p.m. BST Sunday this week. I believe the 26th, if memory serves rightly, though numbers have not been the strongest here on TRTN when it comes to doing basic maths. And that's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll see you on Sunday. Take care and good night.